Hello and welcome to this edition of Trojan Talk. I'm Paige Ray. Joining us today is Captain Jeffrey Gregory. It's so nice to have you here, and welcome to Troy.
Thank you very much.
So we are here today to learn a little bit about yourself and to see what your journey's been like and how it led you to Troy. So first of all, obviously you're military. So Can you tell us a little bit about your military career?
Well, very first of all, I was in JRTC. Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps back in my high school. It was Marine Corps then, but after I got done with that, finished up as a cadet sergeant, I decided to go off to college in Appalachian State University in North Carolina up in Boone. Didn't do the ROTC there. Instead, I waited until I got out and went to basic training up at Fort Benning, now Fort Moore, Georgia. And after that, they moved me over to OCS. Graduated there, was commissioned as a second lieutenant, sent me to Fort Lee, now Fort Gregg in Virginia for basic officer leadership course training, then to Korea for training on an ammunition site, then sent me to Fort Hood in Texas for maintenance company that we were part of. Then from there went back to Fort Lee, Fort Gregg to get my captain's training, and then went to Fort Drum where I had 2 consecutive company commands, one for a maintenance company and one for an HHC, and after that moved here.
So you've been busy.
Quite a bit.
Almost
10 years.
Wow, that's a lot of moving and traveling and going. So now that you're here in Troy, tell us a little bit about your new position. I know you kind of have double duties almost, right, with teaching and...
To a degree. So I am the instructor for, it's going to probably most likely be the sophomore and junior classes, the 201s and 301s. But I'm also the chair of the actual facility here, answering up to Lieutenant Colonel Henderson up in Auburn, in Montgomery. But I'll be managing some of the parts and working side by side with my fellow captain, Captain Stafford, to manage most things.
Okay. Now, we were talking before this interview started, and you had mentioned this is not the first time you've guided or led younger students, younger people. So kind of walk us through your previous experience with that.
Well, as a company commander, I had a number of lieutenants under me. A couple of them were first lieutenants, the black bars, and a couple of them were second lieutenants, the gold bars. I believe 2 or 3 of them were right fresh out of training that I took when I was in charge of the 514th SMC, the Support Maintenance Company. Eventually became the Bravo Company. I took them and they became my platoon's leaders for the individual sections, for the actual armament sections and the vehicle repair sections, etc. And it was my responsibility to train them so they understand exactly how to be lieutenants, be leaders. They had their basic leadership officer course, but there's certain things in the actual service you have to learn from your superiors, from your seniors, and sometimes just on hand. And it was my goal and responsibility to mentor them and teach them the ropes.
I love that. Now tell me, what's your goal now that you're here in Troy? What do you hope to accomplish?
Hopefully the same thing, but this time with cadets. There is a certain amount that we have to teach them by the book, but we've also been told there's a bit that we need to teach them by example, by direct interaction and with direct communication. Yeah, there'll be the syllabus that we have to follow, like you need to learn about team building, you need to learn about communication, land nav, always a fun course. But overall, they do need to learn exactly what it's like to be an officer in the Army, and that's where myself, an officer who's just got finished, as I said, with 2 company commands and who have dealt with soldiers who have had family issues, troubles, financial issues, they need to understand that there's more than just telling people, I'm a lieutenant, listen to me.
And is this kind of experience at this time in their life, before they actually get out into the real world, is that what really makes the big difference, is to learn it now?
The more they can pick up, it's going to be very difficult for them actually to learn it. Like, even I could tell them everything in the world, but it's kind of like they say about enlightenment. You can't really teach someone enlightenment. They have to discover it for themselves. But the best thing I can do is give them the path to follow to it. And the best way to give them that is to explain them my own path, my own journey to it, my experiences, my connections, etc., so that they can chart their own way. It'll be the best way for them.
Well, Captain Gregory, we're so excited to have you here at Troy. I know your students are really excited to finally get to meet you and learn from someone who is really awesome and just got out of it. So we're excited to have you here, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on this edition of Trojan Talk.